My message is visible.
Yes, yes, yes.
Uh, I thank for the extreme interest that was shown in the previous lecture, Junctional Zone, and I'll be sharing some of the articles on Junctional Zone to Dr. Shobha, where it can be redistributed because of copyright issues. I'll be sending it to Dr. Shobha. And uh, in the area of pharmacogenomics, when you look at the Human Genome Project, even though it was ready by 2003, the oncology groups have used the Human Genome Project to a large extent, and they have redefined their classification and used pharmacogenomics in the management of cancer. The reproductive medicine fraternity have lagged behind in using the technological advances in the use of cross-functional research and the use of pharmacogenomics and the proteomics and other things into the main spectrum. We have been satisfied with our IVF stimulation, the pregnancy rates, but we have not gone in using the newer technologies, be it pharmacogenomics, be it proteomics, be it genomics. We are fortunate in having the one of the first publications in the area of pharmacogenomics in the world, but that's just a blip on the horizon, and many more works will come in the coming years. In this lecture, I'll be basically concentrating on what is ongoing hyperresponder, what is LH gene, what is LS-CGR gene, what are the hormone polymorphisms, what is the role of LH polymorphism in LH supplementation, what are the studies we did, what are the key findings that are there, what is the possible mechanisms of this receptor, and what are the follow-up studies we did after that publication. In ovarian stimulation, even though we have crossed 40 years of ovarian stimulation, we have not yet fine-tuned the art of ovarian stimulation. We have predictability issues, we have too many protocols, we don't have a perfect monitoring tools during stimulation. In the last 40 years, except for the estradiol levels and the ultrasound, we don't have monitoring tools during stimulation. And then a lot of times we end up ending in poor responder or over responder, all because at this moment the current markers we use to do a stimulation are not very efficient. For example, when you take the starting dose of a stimulation, we don't have a perfect marker to say this is a starting dosage, and many people use age, FSH, BMI, antral follicle count, AMH, and ovarian volume as one or more markers. And the last 5 years, these are more into age, AMH, or AFC as the primary markers. And this led to a situation of some improvement, but not a perfect improvement. We don't have a formula saying this is the dosage you give to this patient, and this is the follicle to oocyte yield you get it. If one has to perfectly do a perfect ovarian stimulation, they should individually judge themselves what is the follicles that are there and what is the oocyte output that is there at the end of the cycle. If you keep on auditing your results in that context, your stimulation protocol will improve. Just because we got 15 oocytes, we say we are satisfied. But is the 15 oocytes of 15 follicles or 25 follicles which you picked up 15 oocytes? And then how many times did you change the dosage during the cycle? And was your dose constant to the cycle? All these make a difference. And what is the incidence of hyperresponder in a simulation protocol compared to anticipation? And what is the risk of over response in a patient whom you don't anticipate should over respond? These are the key performance indicators one should start taking into so that will improve our outcome. One of the best papers I want all of you to read is the article by P.C. Wong in 2011. The title of the review article is Current Opinion on the Use of Luteinizing Hormone Supplementation in Assisted Reproductive Therapy, an Asian Perspective. I was fortunate to be part of this team of P.C. Wong in this review article, but the major contribution of this article goes to P.C. Wong. I also want you to remember, apart from being a great clinician and from the Singapore University, he was also the co-pioneer of the GIFT technology along with Ash in USA. He and Ash have published the first paper on the GIFT technology. So he is a legend in his own way. And in this article, the concept of LH supplementation was divided into two groups, in the present cycle and in the next cycle. In the present cycle, there is a concept called ongoing hyperresponder. What is ongoing hyperresponder? In ongoing hyperresponder, your antral follicle count is good, but the rate of follicular growth is not coming up to the way you want, and your estrogen levels are not going up to the rate you want. And in these patients, the common thing that is done is the FSH dose is increased. But if you are given adequate dose of FSH based on the age, BMI, and antral follicle count, then in these patients, if you add 75 units of LH, they respond. So the ongoing hyperresponder are patients whom on the day 5 or day 6 or day 8, you see the antral follicles are visibly seen, but the rate of growth is less and the E2 level is low. And in these patients, adding LH will solve the role of the hyperresponder and yield a good yield of oocytes. The recommendations of this paper were to use the LH supplementation in this way, and if it is a previous history with a similar response, then start LH supplementation from day 1. But there are certain reservations that this paper also had said was further research for patients at risk of poor ovarian response based on antral follicle count of less than 6, AMH less than 1.5 need further action, and this was addressed by the Poseidon Group 2 and 4 in the subsequent years of 2016. And the third area is the LH polymorphism, and we were fortunate enough to work on that project. So the carry-home message of this article is, if you have a simulation cycle on day 5 or day 6, you are given adequate dose of FSH and they are not responding, but you are able to see the follicles, don't rise the FSH, add 75 units of LH, and the response will come. These are the hyperresponder patients, and these are different from poor responders. One of the key things one should remember in the role of LH in stimulation protocol is they should make a difference between a poor responder and a hyperresponder. A hyperresponder can be corrected by LH supplementation. A poor responder can't be corrected by LH supplementation. There your numbers are low, and whatever you do, the things should stand the same thing. When you look at the pharmacogenomics of LH and LH-CGR, we try to confuse between an LH gene and LH receptor gene. In an LH gene, most of the problems produce inactivating mutations, and they are more associated with sterility, and they are less common compared to LH receptor gene. So in a clinical practice, the number of times you find an LH gene abnormality in a reproductive medicine is very, very less. Whereas in LH receptor problem, the inactivating mutations are less, their polymorphisms are very common, their close to 520 polymorphisms, of which 3 polymorphisms are important in day-to-day practice. The 3 polymorphisms that are important in day-to-day practice is at the exon 1, a 6 base pair insertion, at the 291 position in the LH gene on exon 10, there is a change in amino acid that's called that has a particular name called RS12470652. Then you have the another gene which is the 312 serine to asparagine change. In the Indian subgroup, we have found, except for one patient, all the patients did not have any 291 polymorphisms. The common polymorphisms we have seen is the exon 10 312 serine to asparagine area, and to a certain extent the 18 exon 1, also known as 6 base pair insertion, are the commonest things we see. Even though there are 520, these are the 3 common things world over, and mostly in India and from the Italian studies, these 312 serine asparagine and exon 1 6 base insertion are the common polymorphisms that are seen which affect the reproductive outcome. I am glad and I am proud to present Robert Fisher's slide of last year, in which he suggested 2 single nucleotide polymorphism receptors are sensitive to exogenous gonadotropins. The first is the 291, which I described earlier. The second is the 312 serine, and he has put the slide of a paper suggesting the importance of our work, and I am proud to be an Indian and to contribute to the global level. How did we attribute LH polymorphism to LH supplementation? After the P.C. Wong article, which I described in the second or third slide, we found that hyperresponders needed LH supplementation. And then we started adding 37 units for younger patients and 75 units for more than 35 years, but later modified it into 75 units for all these patients of hyperresponder. Subsequently, what we did was we acquired a gene sequencer in 2011 and able to do a gene sequence. This is called an electrophoregram, in which an LH CGR 312 is seen here, an A by G is seen here, and a G by G. This is how the report comes in. For every patient, we did an IVF cycle between 2011 and 14. We collected the blood samples, extracted the DNA, and kept it aside. And after completing the cycles, we analyzed the DNA pattern and then correlated with their outcomes. So in the analysis, what we looked at is, in relation to the type of polymorphism, we calculated the LH dosage and the LH supplementation in different genotypes. And what we found was, in G by G, there was a significant need, as 90% of the people needed LH supplementation. In A by G of 312, 90% required, and in A by A, 70% required. When we did a further analysis, the amount of LH needed for A by A was very less, and more so it was needed only in the older patients. Whereas in A by G and G by G, both younger and older people needed LH supplementation. When we further studied them, in 312 A by A, these people needed less amount of LH supplementation and they had androgen excess. And in subsequent cycles, we have completely stopped adding LH supplementation, which I'll explain in a moment. In 312 G by G, they had higher number of previous cycles who are poor responders. Most of the people with 312 G by G will have a regular cycle or a shorter cycle by a couple of days, showing an increased slightly FSH and LH ratio alteration. In conclusion, what we found was, we found a consistent association between LH receptor polymorphism and a higher requirement for LH supplementation in homozygous and heterozygous for serine with a significant increase in the clinical pregnancy rate. So the conclusions of our study was a candidate gene approach may help to predetermine that these predictors can be used to use the LH supplementation. The concept is as follows. This is called the A by A. That means asparagine is the wild type, and there is the LH goes inside freely, and there is no need for LH supplementation. In A by G, you have asparagine serine, some amount of reduction in the soluble LH is there. And in serine G by G, there is a less amount of available LH. So in turn, these are the people which will need LH supplementation. When you look at much more deeply, in 312A by A, where there is no need of LH supplementation, the cyclical AMP production and the androgen production in this receptor is perfect, and there is no need for LH supplementation. And in these women, if you give FSH only, it is adequate. When you look at G by G, there is impaired signaling and less amount of cyclical AMP and androgen production is there. So the need for LH supplementation is there. So this is the molecular basis for LH supplementation in A by A in 312 and G by G in 312. Following this work, we have just submitted a paper on this work, wherein we moved into not giving any LH for an A by A. Then we started giving 37 units for A by G, and we have started giving 75 units for G by G, and we found the results are satisfactory. The key message in this study was LH receptor has an important pharmacogenic role in the responders. More studies are needed, and understanding the integration of FSH and LH-CGR is the future. But before I say the end of this lecture, in a day-to-day practice, when one does not have an LH receptor gene, they can base the study on their ongoing hyperresponder concept. And also, a woman with a G by G will always have a regular cycles, and they're having difficulty in breaking the regulation from monocycler development to multifollicular development. If LH receptor is available, if the report says G by G is there, that means the asparagine is replaced and serine is there, then you have to give 75 units right from the beginning. If it is a heterozygous, we give right from the beginning, but we give 37 units. And when it is wild type A by A, we don't give any LH at all. One important good news that is coming in was, in another couple of years, couple of companies are trying to identify a pregnancy-based card which will have 3 parameters containing LH-CGR 312 with different lines, and if you put a drop of blood, it identifies that thing and give you a bedside tool where you don't need the whole gene sequence to identify it, but it will take 2 to 2.5 years to come in. The carry-home message of this thing is, one should understand there is no role for LH in poor responder. And second thing is, a hyperresponder does not need oocyte donation. If it is in the current cycle, you can add LH supplementation. And if you have the privilege of having the LH receptors, then you can plan the cycle of LH supplementation right from the day one, so that your follicle to oocyte output and your poor responders and your hyperstimulations are significantly reduced.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that's been very enlightening, actually.
Can you stop sharing the screen, sir?
Yeah.
Devika? I'll go with the questions which are there in the PowerPoint. So
Yeah,
could
sure.
you please go through the questions which has come in the chat box? Okay. So I'll take up these questions and then you please see what questions have come in the chat box.
Why should we offer polymorphism? The answer is very simple. If you have a sophisticated tool which will avoid a failure of a cycle and it will give you optimum oocyte and it's like this, it's a precision tool which will make you stimulate the ovary in the right way and offer adequate follicle to oocyte output ratio and in turn a better pregnancy rate is the reason to do polymorphism. The second thing is, instead of wasting a cycle of testing and then failing, you use a polymorphism to decide who needs LH supplementation and then get a better outcome.
So the question is like, we are asking, sir, which patient should we offer? Polymorphism, definitely we know it's a wonderful tool. If I understand that and we can give to the patient, but which patients, how do I decide? Do I do for all ART patients or from select group of patients? How do I select which patients I'm going to test?
Once commercial tests come in, my answer is to every patient.
Go at the chat and.
Okay.
My answer is to every patient because what happens is it makes our treatment more efficient.
Okay. At this stage, or you want to do a few more studies have to come, or we need to understand our population, or like, do you think right now we are ready to take up this FSH polymorphism test, sir, for all patients?
To be honest, there are only few groups. One is from Italy, who has done the work on LH polymorphism, and our group, and now Carla Luigi and Sandros are trying to do a multinational study using the LH receptor to use it in a double-blind study that will give us a validate our information. And the answer is like this: we found FSH receptors are not so important as LH receptors in terms of follicle to oocyte output.
Okay.
The only extra information I get from FSHR is in FSHR 6/80, if I have a by A, that is serine, there my number of oocytes will come down, but it will not be useful to improve the outcome. Even though we do FSHR and LHCGR receptors, we found only the 312 receptor is the most useful in improving the outcome or in improving the manipulation. Then regarding the estrogen receptors and AMH receptors, I don't have any experience at all because I didn't do any work on that.
Okay. So now you're telling that we can only ask for an LHCGR receptor testing. So there's no need to ask for an FSH receptor testing?
Yes, the answer is yes for the next 2 years.
Okay. Is there any epidemiological studies done in the normal fertile woman to see for polymorphism?
Each test is a bomb. So doing it for epidemiological studies, if somebody sends me normal fertile women who have conceived spontaneously, and if they're able to send me 300 such fertile women, I'm willing to cooperate with that couple, with that group.
Okay.
So how much does it cost, sir, then, your bomb?
10,000 rupees.
Oh my God. Okay.
Each is 6,000. 6,000. Yeah.
10,000, right?
6,000. Anderson are charging us 6,000.
I mean, like what we do is we do FSHR 680, 807, 29. We also do Exon 1, 291 at the 10th pair, and the 312. Totally 6 sets of genes. 6 sets of genes are there. But whatever said and done, It's not cheap.
Yeah, it's not cheap. Yes.
And
Is there
one
any
thing-
evidence to suggest the testing for polymorphism in hyper-responders?
yes, if you have a 312 A by A and a FSH 6 by 8, 6 by 8, 680 G by G, then the risk of hyperstimulation is very high.
So we can find out by testing, and it can be done.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I please ask one question in between? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Have you used these tests on your own patients in the sense of apart from or outside the research context? Have you used it and then tried to kind of modify your stimulation protocol or something?
One thing is, people think Merck supported me. The answer is no. Every paisa we paid for 3,000 tests, is the clinic subsided it.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah.
And whatever I'm talking is with from 2,900 tests, and for 2,400 tests, we did not charge anything. Only after the publication of the paper, we started charging 10,000 rupees.
Right.
Okay.
And this is blood. You take blood or what?
Blood.
Blood only.
Yeah.
Even the buccal mucosa can be taken, but Indian women don't feel comfortable with buccal mucosa.
Okay.
So this is same. I think you have already answered this question. We can find out by testing whether the patient is having hyper response or poor response.
Yes.
The answer is yes. Does FSH or polymorphism explain resistant PCOS? Any studies have been done regarding the same?
One thing is, I never faced anybody with resistant PCO.
You have never seen a case?
With resistant PCO.
You have not seen.
Tell me, what is resistant PCO?
Doesn't respond to your dose of PC, your gonadotrophins. You give 150. Generally in PCOS, you say that, you want to start with 150 or 225. She just doesn't respond, and you increase, you go on giving, she doesn't respond. So you are telling, now what do we do for such a patient?
I mean, I would like to look at the testosterone levels.
Okay.
I would like to look at the insulin levels.
Okay.
And I would like to also look at the clinical profile of the distribution of the follicles, whether I'm having 30 follicles or not. And then I would put them on metformin,
Okay.
reduce my testosterone, and then stimulate them.
Drilling you would want to do?
The answer is no.
You have not done?
No.
No?
No. The only exception is when the testosterone is elevated, beyond 75 and beyond 100. I would also like to look at 17-hydroxyprogesterone and the DHEA. There I might add dexamethasone and reduce the those levels before I start the stimulation.
Okay. Any studies have been done, sir, on this? PCOS and polymorphism.
The PCOS and polymorphisms are studied, but what happens is the PCO does not fall into the same group. Sometimes you also see PCO in the G by G group.
Can the results of polymorphism of FSH and LH receptors in the leukocytes, that is peripheral blood, what we see, be extrapolated to polymorphism in the granulosa cell?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Because the blood, we are looking at gene polymorphism.
Okay.
The gene polymorphism is everywhere in the body.
The answer is yes for this. Okay. Okay. Now this is a practical question we are going to ask you, sir. We want you to tell us, like, not in the research context, in the clinical practice context. So how do we counsel the patients before testing? How do we interpret the results? What should be our post counseling? So I'm going to put a mock report to you. So we want you to tell, before asking for a test in a woman, what do you counsel her?
No. I mean, to be honest, after a publication,
Okay.
we tell them you have to do this test. We don't give any choice.
Or no choice. Because they know you've done a research, they may say yes. Suppose I have to do, what do I tell the patient? He will ask me, why am I doing this test?
No. What happens is you should have a standard protocol and say this is the protocol I follow.
Okay. Okay. So you're making it as almost like a sort of a part of a protocol.
Yeah, in 2011, we did it for every patient that we had an IVF.
Okay.
And we stored all the DNA for further validation by anybody in the world.
Okay.
From 2019, we started charging it because we didn't want to charge, even though we understood the concept. With a publication, I am clear that my data is validated by the peer reviews. And my paper was rejected 12 times.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
I don't blame them because the peer reviewer should be not biased against LH. The peer reviewer should be good in stimulation protocol. The peer reviewer should understand pharmacogenomics. The peer reviewer should be good in LH receptor and FSH receptor. Otherwise, they'll say your publication is good, but it will not fit our journal. You can try elsewhere.
Oh,
The last one on the list is
sorry, proceed, sir.
coming from India, where they have their own skepticism about Indian work.
So this test,
But Shobana, to answer that, to just kind of say, I mean, you should actually, I do not know, Dr. Ramaraju can actually throw some light on this. Maybe it should be advocated for patients who have not responded the way you expected them to respond, right? I mean, so it's a normogonadotrophic hyporesponder. So everything that you see is normal, but then when you actually give her the medication, nothing happens. So maybe those are the ones that you actually have to suggest LH polymorphism, LH receptor polymorphism test for, I think.
If you're seeing adequate antral follicles and you did not get the follicle to oocyte output, then the first criteria which need LH polymorphism.
Yeah, maybe those are the kinds of people.
but basically hyporesponders you're telling.
Normogonadotrophic.
Yeah, normogonadotrophic hyporesponders.
Yeah, hyporesponders in the previous cycle.
Present cycle also, if she is not responding, you can.
But you have to go send the blood and you take the test, get the test report, and then come. And
But then testing has to be done. Yeah, testing has to be done next cycle, right? Correct. Okay. So this is a mock report of one of the patient. So we want you to tell us how do we interpret this test. So this was a patient who was sent for LHCGR and FSHR gene polymorphism screening in view of secondary infertility. She has a history of IU and IVF failure. Therefore, she's being tested for 5 commonly reported polymorphism in the above mentioned genes. This was the report. What is the interpretation of this report, sir? And what do you tell the patient?
Here, what I would look at is as follows. Most of the time, in this patient, if your tubes are normal, then she might have a male factor rather than a ovarian factor.
So what is the interpretation of this? Sir, let us confess to you that, we have not been trained in the genetics, neither in undergraduates or postgraduates, and this is like, it is tongue twisting for us even to say all those words, and that variant, if you see it, you will develop a mind block. Look, it is so complex. Can you simplify and tell us, like, okay, you see this, if this is like this is what you have to do. Is it anything simplified way? Can we understand this?
Yes. Exon 1 does not have implication on the stimulation protocol. That means LHCG or exon 1.
Okay.
But these people should be warned after reading the literature that that group of patients in future have a higher risk of breast cancer.
Oh.
So in exon 1, the second report is LHCG or exon 10 homozygous G by G.
It was alleged.
Okay.
In this patient, most of the time you'll have regular menstrual cycles,
Okay.
and her acne levels will be very low, and her body hair will be low. Then when you go into FSHR 29G by A, I wouldn't bother about that report. FSHR 307, I wouldn't bother about the report. FSHR 680, heterozygous, does not have negative or positive implications.
Okay.
So in this,
3112 is important.
if
Exon 10 312.
if the FSHR 680, that's the last report,
Okay.
is A by A, I expect poor responder.
Okay. Okay. So now this is a report they have given. This is a variant interpretation they had given in this report. They said it is most likely to experience IVF failure or has low chance of achieving IVF success. So they have a disclaimer telling that all this polymorphism can work along with estrogen receptors polymorphism and ovarian response, and this data is not for Indian ethnicity. This indicates only the prediction and not diagnostic of a condition.
I mean, I would challenge them to get them pregnant.
Okay.
Because
So I think in that second line it was G by G. No, so according to whatever you have said, we must add on LH in that, right?
yes,
Yeah, and in heterozygous, the last line is really not significance. Only if it is homozygous, then you have to again add LH. Huh? Is it something like that?
no, if FSHR, the last line 680, A by A is there.
No, G by A.
No. If it is not G by A but A by A,
Okay, she's normal.
no, she will need higher dose of FSH.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay.
Because there is a lot of data showing 680 A by A needs higher dose compared to other groups of patients.
Okay, fine. Okay, yeah. So yeah, understood that.
Okay. Now, after this, they give that report, like, they tell what is the genotype, what will be the phenotype. In the report says, if this is a genotype, this is going to the phenotype. That is acceptable? I mean, we can analyze, interpret like that?
No, what you should understand is, for amino acid asparagine,
Okay.
the abbreviation is asparagine, the abbreviation is ASN, the abbreviation is A.
Yeah, that's my next question actually. I put up that question.
And for serine, the abbreviation is serine, the second is SCR, and the third is N is the serine.
When is it in here? Okay.
So these people have confused.
Yeah.
A by A is asparagine and asparagine. N by N is serine. G by G is the base pair that you have replaced. For AT to GC, you have replaced GG. So we are confused between the base pairs and the abbreviation of the amino acid.
So now I put up this slide, and most of the literature, when you look at polymorphism, some books have given this serine and A by G. Some book have given the genotype. Some publications have given variant.
So
how is the right way to remember this? You must remember A by A, G by G. That's the right way of remembering them.
no. Serine has three abbreviations. One is serine, the second is SCR,
Okay.
the third is N.
What is G?
Because G basically they have confused the structure. Here instead of writing the amino acid change, they have written the base pair change.
This is all in the published literature which have been published on polymorphism. They have given like that. Sir, I was wondering international consensus on how reporting has to be done.
That's true, but the author can make a mistake, no?
Okay.
Shobana, you and I need to go for a first genetics class.
No, I think most of us have to go, Devika.
Yeah.
And it is very easy to say that we will do the testing, but then the
Exactly. To understand it. So
Ah,
do the testing and we send it to Dr. Ramaraju for interpretation and then he sends it back.
What happens is it's not so complex.
no?
It's not so complex. But what people make complex is not using the uniform lettering code to describe it.
Exactly.
And the second thing is they're confusing people by in the same article. Somewhere they write serine, somewhere they write CR, somewhere they write N
Yes. Yes.
in the same article.
Yes. Precisely that is what they have done.
Even on our own article, we made that mistake.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we didn't have so much of thorough control on the thing.
Okay.
So at different points, we wrote serine, SCR, and N. Technically, they're right, but we did not use uniform nomenclature and never explained in the appendix that this is what is the meaning.
Okay. Right. So next question, we'll move on to the next clinical question. What are the markers for addition of LH supplementation in COS? And do you test for LH during your stimulation protocol?
The second question is, during stimulation protocol, I don't test the LH because I don't find the need for testing LH because I don't think it will add any value.
And also the bioactive LH may not be equivalent to the amount of LH that you actually measure. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Second thing is, the markers for addition of LH supplementation is the hyperresponder.
Okay.
That means you see follicles, but the rate of follicular growth is less. It correlates with your estrogen levels. Another thing which I do is when I'm doing a stimulation, I also look at cervical secretions. If we are looking at cervical secretions and they are progressing well, the estrogen levels are fine. I would like to add, how do I start a stimulation protocol dosage? I take a base value of 200 units, which is an arbitrary FSH. Then I take the BMI 25 as arbitrary unit. If the BMI is less than 25, I minus 25 units. The BMI is 30, I add plus the 25 units. The BMI is 35, I add plus 50 units. Similarly, I add age. If the age is 30 years, 28 to 30 years, my basal level FSH is 200. If it's 25, I minus 25 units. If it's 20, I minus 50 units. If it is 35, I add 25 units. Then I take the AMH or antral follicle count, only one of them. If the antral follicle count is 8 to 14, I put it as 200 units. If it's more than 14 to 20, I minus 25 units. If it is less than 8, I add another 25 units. And if it is more than 25, I minus another 25 units. More than 30, I minus another 25 units.
Okay.
And
This we have to have calculator.
and it works. And also look at endometriosis. If the patient had endometriotic surgery and an enucleation of the endometrioma, add 25 units. If somebody does ovarian drilling for a regular cycle woman, add 25 units.
Oh, okay.
And if there is an extensive endometriosis or a myomectomy which is larger, which might alter the blood flow, adds 25 units. But one thing is, even though I join together, and even though it comes beyond 300 units, I don't give beyond 300 units. I give only 300 units.
Okay. So based on the patient profile, you keep changing. Okay.
But even though the value comes 400 units, I don't give 400 units. I only give 300 units.
100 max. Okay.
And I give FSH. But sometimes what happens is, you're in PCOD who has excess responder, your FSH dose can come as low as 50 or 75 units.
Okay.
And then I write how many oocytes I'm going to get, then correlate it after the egg retrieval, whether I got that number or not, which I audit every time.
You predict the number of oocytes when you actually start.
I might have 30 oocytes, but when I do this protocol, I say this is the number I want
That is when do you predict it, sir?
on the day one.
The day one.
Oh.
And then your ego takes a hit when you get 25.
Okay.
Time what happens is you fine tune your simulation, because in the PCOD you find two sets of follicles, very small follicles and slightly bigger than that follicles.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't change my dosage in between. At the most I change my dosage once, but the number of times I change my dosage is less than 10%.
I have a question here because I do know that you use a lot of downregulation protocols for your, downregulation for your stimulation. Is that correct? Or has that changed?
Now, because people are commenting, I also gained experience in Antagon.
Okay. Okay, fine. But then if you start for a PCO who's got a high AMH, high antifollicular count, if you start at 75, and you don't change it for a long time, then your stimulation protocol is going to go on and on and on.
Because I have given importance to age.
Oh, with all that minus and plus.
Minus.
Okay.
Then I've given it to the BMI.
Yeah, all that also. But then the thing is that if you're only going to start at 75, I mean, it's going to go on forever.
No. I mean, very few people, if the woman is obese, if the PC, you don't get it at 75.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So you do all the calculations, the minus and the plus ones. Okay.
Okay. So I think from our reserved questions, this is the last question. Do you think the future is pharmacogenomic approach to standardize the treatment protocol for in ART? So we know this pharmacogenomic approach is already used in cardiology and urology and all that. So do you think that subsequently we will start doing along with AMH, AFC, age, BMI and all that one polymorphism test, sir? Do you think the future is going to be like that?
In 4 to 5 years, the answer is 100% yes. I can give it in writing.
Oh, okay.
I have one last question. Shobana, if you want to ask anything more?
Devika, we have some questions in the chat box. So after this question, we'll go to the chat box. Okay, I want you to take up the questions in the chat box.
I can't see those questions though.
Can't see? Nivedita, can you see?
No, I can see the option, but all the questions are not there.
Yeah, questions are not there.
The chat is open, but I don't see the questions.
Yeah.
Any questions are there? Okay. Can you just check it? Okay, you are asking something, Devika. Please go ahead.
The questions have
The
been
question
sent.
only sent to Dr. Shobana. Okay, fine. That's only you have the question, Shobana.
That's what it says.
So one very quick question. There was one company from Hyderabad which actually approached me saying that, you can, if you have patients with recurrent implantation failure or recurrent failed IVFs, then then would you want to? I mean, you could send them the patient's blood, the husband and the wife's blood, looking at the various parameters, and they would give you an answer as to not how to do the stimulation protocol, but then whether to use their own oocytes, or own sperm. And this is one company that has been pushing it even for recurrent miscarriage. So do you believe in things like that?
The answer is no.
Why?
The reason is, first of all, is we should look at product of conception before we say it's an aneuploid or euploid pregnancy.
Yeah, but just because you have a product of conception which is aneuploid for the first time does not mean that it is again going to be aneuploid the next time, no?
Then what are they looking at in the oocytes and the sperm?
They're doing some kind of a DNA analysis. I do not know for various sperm parameters and things. Oh, we have so many questions. Okay, so I'll give you a call and ask you if I have a problem with that.
I think Devika, quickly we have to take a questions quickly.
Yeah.
So question number 14. You start with question number 14. Yeah.
14 is okay. Yeah, from Dr. Aparna Sunil in Kochi. So similarly, FSH polymorphism can be used to adjust both the FSH dose and the LH addition, as some FSH polymorphisms are prone for OHSS. Is that correct?
No, actually what happens is, what are the publications come in? In FSH 680, A by A, there are many papers to show they need large amount of stimulation. But when it comes to FSHR 680 G by G, there are only 1 or 2 publications showing they hyper-respond. So in terms of evidence that is there, FSHR 680 A by A needs larger stimulation to get more adequate number of oocytes, but not more number of oocytes. So the answer is in between.
Okay. Now, again, same Aparna Sunil from Kochi says, is there a role of FSH and LH polymorphism in male infertility?
There are a couple of papers are there, but we didn't work anything on that. So the answer is, my knowledge is 0.
Okay. Dr. Ramesh P from again Kochi, any harm in giving LH for A by A?
We found the pregnancy rates did not make a difference, but the carry home baby rate made a difference.
So it was lower or higher or what?
Where we gave LH for the A by A, the pregnancy rates were same, but the carry home baby rates were lower.
If you added LH?
Yes. Subsequently we stopped it, but it's because the carry home baby rate is ultimate criteria.
I see.
There
Yeah.
were more miscarriages, is it? I mean, there were more miscarriages because LH was added to A by A. How did the take home baby rate go down?
We didn't have an explanation, but one of the study we did was, which we just submitted for publication, was we had 118 patients who had a IVF cycle with us in between 2007 and 11, and then they came back between 2014 to 18. There were 118 patients, and in these patients, that means they are the self-control group. When we use the polymorphism, in this group, after removing LH from the A by A, it had a significant pregnancy rate and carry home baby rate. And in the G by G, whom we added LH, which we did not add in the first cycle, the carry home baby rate was mind-boggling, close to 46%. And these are the patients who came back after 5 years after the first cycle.
Okay. Mr. Sridharan Karthikeyan from Chennai, we all know HMGs are being spiked by HCG for LH activity. Do we have a test or analysis available here to identify the content of HCG spiked in each of these HMG brands and possibility of identifying the sources of these spiked HCGs?
What you can do is you can dilute it and then do a serum HCG level, you get the values.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Or you can put on a pregnancy test to verify first of all whether HCG is added on a pregnancy test kit. Get it positive. Then you use it a dilution factor and estimate how you do the HCG estimation. But whether you have to use saline or distilled water, I'm not sure, but I remember it's saline.
Okay. Smita Jain from Ghaziabad. In absence of LH polymorphism testing, how can we make use of LH supplementation in our protocols?
The answer is very simple. If you have a hyperresponder and you're seeing follicles, do an adequate FSH dosage, and then add 75 units of LH. That's the most easiest, convenient, and cost-effective method.
Okay.
Okay.
This is the same question, I think.
Repeat it again.
Question.
Yeah. So
You want to get that question? Yeah.
yeah. Next question is by Dr. Rita Bilyandi from Bengaluru. Hyporesponders are helped by LH supplementation, whereas poor responders are not. But studies have shown benefits in older women.
Actually, what happens is when they looked at older women, that study was independent of hyperresponder.
Uh-huh.
And they did not rule hyperresponders in the older women group to say LH supplementation benefits. There was only groups of people saying the number of receptors decrease on the granular cell, so you need LH supplementation, which has been seldom proved at the immunohistochemistry level.
Okay, Dr. Shashireka from Chennai, can we give simple HMG instead of LH if affordability is a concern?
For an young woman, anything is fine. For a young woman who is less than 30 years, any medication is fine. But as the age goes, as the comorbidity increases, using a purer preparation makes a difference.
Okay.
So,
So question 22, I think, is the same thing, no?
we have questions. Another 20 questions. So, so quickly we must take yes, no, yes, no, yes. We should do yes like that.
Okay, Dr. Rita Bilyandi from Bengaluru, are there different types of hyperresponders based on their LH receptor gene composition?
In a G by G, very few times you get hyperresponder. Unless you give more FSH dosage than what is required. In A by A, they tend to hyperrespond. But one thing is, I want all of you to accept one thing is, use one product of HMG and use one product of FSH and try to ask the supplier to give the same batch of medication and tell you when they change the batch. It makes a huge difference.
I agree.
Second thing is, look at your cold chain management and look at your fridge, whether it's cold, over cold, or at the appropriate temperature as described by the manufacturers. These are the two areas which make a huge difference in the stimulation protocol. And the third thing is, never take the stock from the representative.
Never bring the stock on?
From the representative.
From the representative. Okay.
Always get it from the stockist.
Yeah. Actually, so you can also ask for a data log, no? Regarding the temperature?
But the younger people will not be knowing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And asking the data logger is the best thing. But for the newcomers, from the stockist, it's implied that the stockist will take precautions. And second thing is, be aware if you are using HMG, try to use a single batch for a single cycle so that your stimulation is uniform. That makes a lot of difference.
Correct.
Okay.
Dr. Aradhya from Hyderabad, if we see there is less response, can we still add RLH on recombinant LH on day 7 or day 8? Will it help in improving the response?
If your antral follicle count is good and your starting dose of FSH is adequate based on your There are algorithms either by Shankara, where she had the lines of the adequate dosage, age, AMH, and AFC. If you followed that thing, where she had, in one of her human reproduction papers, she wrote about a diagram showing the amount of FSH that should be the starting dosage. If you use that, then adding LH makes a sense. If you are given suboptimal dosages and then add LH, it doesn't work.
Okay. In antagonist cycles, is the role of LH supplementation the same as in agonist cycles? Because in these, the basal LH levels are usually okay. I think the answer is the same, right? You already answered it. Is the LH supplementation role is the same in agonist and antagonist cycles?
Answer is same because there's new data coming in that the fall of LH happens from the 6th day to 9th day. But the relative fall in relation to agonistic cycle is different. But the fall happens.
So you can use it in the same way.
Anyway.
Okay, can you please opine regarding the impact of estrogen receptor polymorphism on endometrial receptivity?
My knowledge is zero in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Mona from Chennai, sir, in patients with LH gene polymorphism, will day 2 estradiol levels be lower, particularly in PCO patients?
If you are looking at Antagon protocol, and if your withdrawal bleeding is for medroxyprogesterone estate, your E2 levels might be lower. And if you are giving a pill for longer duration, your E2 level on day 2 will be lower in a PCO cycle.
No, she's asking in relation to LH gene polymorphism.
Because what happens is when this variable is there, I don't think that will make a difference.
Okay, sir.
And using a pill for 2 cycles and then looking at the E2 on the day 2.
Okay, from Vizag, Monica Ravuri. E2 on day 9 of stimulation was 7,000 picograms. PCO AMH is 3.2. So she retrieved 9M2 and 11M1 oocytes. Do you think there is a polymorphism in this case?
Here is a mismatch between the number of oocytes retrieved and the E2 levels. Do you agree?
Yeah, she finally got 20 oocytes, out of which only 9 were M2.
With 7,000,
yeah, very high, yeah. And there's also mismatch between that and her AMH, because at 3.2, I don't know if you should actually get a nice 7,000. I do not know.
And she must be looking at, she must recount her antral follicle count in a better way. Using the Cine loop method, if she does not have Sony ABC, and then count it carefully, because sometimes people tend to count only the 10 millimeter follicles. They don't count the 4 millimeter follicles.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where they make the mistake.
Okay. Dr. Padmaja Veeramachaneni from Vijayawada. One group of PCOs have very small follicles, antral follicles 2 to 4 millimeters, hypothecosis, volume of approximately 15 ml and 40 follicles. What should she do? 50 follicles.
What should you do? Means like, I would prefer to do a testosterone level. Reduce the testosterone.
No, that we do not know. She's not told.
There is the president of East Andhra Pradesh Obstetrics and Gynec Society. Talk to her. But basically, unless I have the data,
Yeah, I can't actually tell.
Yeah.
don't pull my leg.
Doctor, we have quite a few, sir.
Quite a few, sir. Another 5 we will take. Another 5 they will stop. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Santosh Gupta, to avoid such an expensive test, can we add 75 IU LH to all IVF stimulation? Santosh Gupta from Bangalore.
The cost of LH is around 2,500 per day. And you're giving it for 10 to 12 days. compared to the cost of the test.
Hmm.
One thing is, there is a misconception about low-cost IVF. Low-cost IVF optimizing the cost without compromising the result and avoiding unnecessary evidence-based products to be used during the cycle and minimizing the tests where you have strong evidence is low-cost IVF as per me. Low-cost IVF is not doing the right thing. That's how I look at it.
So that means you're saying you don't believe in low cost IVF.
Believe it, but not at the cost of the pre-IVF workup.
Not at the cost of?
Pre-IVF workup.
Okay.
What happens is most of the time low-cost IVF people say, but don't do the male workup.
Oh. Okay.
So is it justified?
Okay. Should we go on to the next question? Rita Bilangi from Bangalore.
Devika, just check there. That these questions have been taken up. I think we move down.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So hypo responders, I think 23rd Rita, which the question has been asked already answered. Huh? I think 34 you can take up.
Okay, Dr. Geeta from Coimbatore, what will be the starting dose for 34 years PCO, AMH 9, BMI 33, AFC 90? You must get a calculator.
Managed to count 90 follicles.
Another.
So this is, you're going to answer this, sir? She's a 35-year-old, so that's plus 25, I think. Then AMH is 9.
Questions are all, Devika, questions have been repeated. Okay, and I think I'm just happy to tell you that we have more than 532 delegates, who are listening to him. That's a huge number. Congratulations, sir. And I think we'll take
fantastic.
last question we will take. I think most of the questions I think we have already answered.
We
I think 40 and 41. Can you take up those questions, Devika?
Okay, Vijay Honawat from Hubli in India. What is the question? In India, many IVF centers use HMG.
No, next 41.
In
many cycles, HMG is used for all patients. Is it harmful to the patient who does not need if you do polymorphism?
Polymorphism comes for the role of LH supplementation. When you're using a HMG cycle, I don't think polymorphism has a role. The reason is already you're giving LH supplementation, you're also giving HCG supplementation and a HMB and a FSH supplementation. So there, I don't think there's a role for polymorphism because polymorphism is to fine-tune your stimulation.
Okay. Sir, just one, I think we've come to the end of our questions, and like Dr. Rita said, congratulations, it's been a real successful program, and that all credit goes to your huge reputation as a pioneer, also as an academician, and you do excellent work, and also
ultimately, did I share the knowledge? That's the bottom line.
Yes, I'm sure you did. But just a few, because I think a lot of people are asking about polymorphism, just a few practical points. I mean, because polymorphism right now may not be available to everybody in the commercial sense. So just a few, 2-3 takeaway points on this lecture.
Now, what happens is I would prefer to have the questions and then write a white paper on that because that makes more sense.
Okay. One takeaway point.
One takeaway point is, if they're able to use hyperresponder optimally, there's no need to use polymorphism.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good.
That's really good.
Define your own starting dosage in a rational way and keep on looking at the follicle to oocyte ratio. A combination of these two things will not treat polymorphism to a large number of people.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
That is very, very simple. People don't do this and expect polymorphism to solve the problems.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, you do think that the genetics is the way forward.
Genetics is a way forward, but there are much simpler answers. You should be very clear about how you are doing the starting dosage. You should be using one single product, whichever the company is. Look at your cold chain management, and then use hyporesponder as an allied supplementation. Then doing a polymorphism test is not needed.
Yes, sir. Great. Thank you so much. Last words from you, Shobana.
I request Nivedita to propose a vote of thanks, and I definitely want to congratulate Ramaraju sir, and I'm very happy that we have so many viewers, and then we have done such a fantastic job. Almost 2 hours, I think, more than 2, nearing 2 hours. We have discussed this 2 topics, and thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Nivedita, can you please propose a vote of thanks?
I'm very happy for the Karnataka ISAR Society for allowing me to share the knowledge, which very few societies have did it.
So we are different, sir. We are
We are
different.
waiting for you, sir.
We are different.
Very happy and proud.
Thank you.
But now I shall be concluding the session. It's a futuristic session. I think the word would fit as futuristic. The topics were all futuristic. Our talk was futuristic. I think we must appreciate the time and effort spared for the chapter, Karnataka chapter. Thank you so much, sir. I've also got to thank Merck Sereno for supporting us in this endeavor. And the names that I need a special mention are Mr. Rajendra Mohan, who's the National Sales Manager, and Mr. Vijay Raghavan, the Regional Business Manager. Mr. Seshaya and Mr. Subbu have helped us with the web platform, and they've organized it so smoothly. We didn't have any disruption. Brilliant. I thought that they did a great job. Our esteemed audience, their participation, 532 is a brilliant number, and that inspires us to conduct more such sessions. I'm sure the delegates have all gained practical insight, and they'll have some changes to apply in their clinical practice. I also want to conclude by thanking Dr. Shobna, our president, who always has a very meticulous and perfection-driven sessions. Everything is always very meticulous and perfectly organized. Thank you. Dr. Devika, whose valuable inputs are always appreciated, and her mere presence is always special. Just appreciate even more. I love you when you're around. Nice to have you around.
Thank you very much for all the kind words. I've enjoyed myself, and thank you. I've always enjoyed interacting with Dr. Ramaraju. I think, like I've mentioned so many times before, he's given me so many ideas, and whenever I'm in trouble, I always give you a call, sir, and to discuss what I can do further. So thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.